Welcome to Extraterrestrial Reality. Today we have a special guest with us. Is Jack Connor with Cosmic Road. It's a YouTube channel called Cosmic Road, and it's something I've been watching a lot lately. I really enjoy it. Jack has a lot of ideas and commentary. He offers a lot of ideas and commentary. What's going on with this ongoing cover up and the actions of Congress and these committees with regard to the UAP issue, and he had a lot of things to say after Wednesday's Senate committee hearing, where Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick talked about UAP and basically, for the most part, dismissed it. And according to Jack, he lied. I've come to that conclusion too. At first, I didn't reach that conclusion. I actually gave him the benefit of the doubt after that hearing was ended. I thought maybe there was a possibility that he's just not given all the information, or that he lied, one or the other. But after listening to Jack and also, thinking about the situation, I think he actually lied, and he knew what he was talking. He knew that he was lying. I mean, I think we're continuing to be getting lied to, and I wanted to bring Jack on here to give his ideas on what's happening and his perspective on this hearing and what does it mean. So what do you think, Jack? I mean, you said that Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick lied. I mean, how do you feel we are heading right now with this whole situation? I mean, it seemed like for a while early on, from 2017 into 2021, 2022, it seemed like we were part of a slow disclosure. I'm not seeing that right now. I don't know. How do you feel about this?
Yeah. So, Lou Elizondo was not happy with how things were with ATIP. He couldn't even brief Mad Dog. It seemed like government wasn't being cooperative with the investigation into UAP or UFOs, and they didn't seem like it was as genuine an effort as he would have liked it to have been. So he had to leave government and smuggle these videos out in a very sneaky way, illegal way, but a sneaky way, with his allies and Chris Mellon and TTSA. And, really kickstarted this whole thing, got this grassroots movement going, engaged the public, got all the three videos on all the major news networks, got the New York Times, just a really, galvanizing moment in UFO history. Got me on board. I wasn't a UFO guy before 2017. I didn't believe in any of this. I figured aliens were out there somewhere, but they weren't here. If they were here, they should be on the White House lawn, right? So he went through all this process, finally got the public engaged, the public got Congress engaged, everything, all leading up to the creation of AARO. And then we have the lovely Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who is of the same ilk as the people that have been hiding and obfuscating this issue for the government forever, leading AARO. So, that's not why Lou left. Lou didn't kickstart this whole thing for Sean Kirkpatrick to be leading the charge. And why do I say Sean Kirkpatrick is a liar? Well, according to Dr. Gary Nolan, nobody knows more about UFOs than Sean Kirkpatrick. He has been in this for a while. He is very knowledgeable. And according to Brandon Fugel, the owner of Skinwalker Ranch, when he was meeting with some government types, and he was told by one of these government types not even to bother trying to sell them on the idea of UFOs, because they already knew of it. They already knew of the reality of UFOs. They knew kind of what was going on, and not even to waste their time trying to show them all the UFO evidence, because they already knew it. And that individual was Sean Kirkpatrick. So according to those two pieces of information from fairly knowledgeable sources, we know that Sean Kirkpatrick knows about UFOs. He has been in this for a while, and he is already aware of the reality of the UFO phenomenon and of the anomalous nature of the UFO phenomenon. And yet, when he went before Congress, and also, of course, AARO inherited the 5 observables from ATIP, right, which were all measures of anomalous objects, right? This is how you could tell an object was anomalous, if it displayed one of the 5 observables, like instant acceleration, etc. So They inherited these 5 observables, which are all measures of defying the known laws of physics and moving in ways that we don't understand. And then Kirkpatrick gets up there and says, "Oh, anomalous objects, what are you talking about? None of these things defy the known laws of physics." Totally throwing out the 5 observables, which, that we know they have. And of course, we also know that behind the scenes that they have received testimony from people like Robert Salas, who, and others who have seen some crazy stuff, where they've seen UFOs turning off nuclear silos. We know they have the goods as far as that goes. As far as it's early days for AARO yet, but we know they have a lot of information that they've either inherited from ATIP or else have gathered since then. And yet he goes on the stand and lies brazenly. And that's what he has done until now. The UAP report that came out a few months ago that he released was nothing but lies. He said, there's only 3 items on the UAP report. One was that there were no health effects. And obviously there are health effects from UAP activity, good and bad. I mean, the beings have healed people, but people also have gotten radiation sicknesses and immuno problems. And obviously, once you get into the abductions and the unwanted pregnancies that result from some of these, so there's just a wide range of health effects. So that was a lie. The other item was there were no collisions. There were, a risk to airborne traffic. And, I encourage you to go watch Preston Dennett's video, which came out before the report. It wasn't a rebuttal to the report, which is an important point. But it would have been fun if it had been a rebuttal to the report. But it's a list of all these cases where UFOs have collided with human vehicles, planes, trains, and automobiles. Believe it or not, UFOs.
I saw that.
Yeah. So that item was a lie, and so the only other item on the UAP report was the numbers of cases. How many have been solved versus how many have been unsolved. And we know from George Knapp that Sean Kirkpatrick fudged those numbers so that it appeared there were more explained cases than unexplained cases. So those were the 3 items on the UAP report. Every single item was a lie. And then he goes and co-authors the scientific paper with Avi Loeb. And I love Avi. I'm so glad that he's in the game. But he is approaching everything from a mainstream scientific point of view. And, that's the position of the paper that he wrote with Sean Kirkpatrick. And, we have to, according to that paper, view the UFO phenomenon through the lens of conventional physics. And, again, the 5 observables, right? We can't really understand these things. And it even said something like to the effect, if it's unexplainable, it's not there. It doesn't exist. It seemed to me that Sean Kirkpatrick was using Avi Loeb's respectability to slow down the study of UFOs and retard the investigation of UFOs and understanding of UFOs. Because, again, we're not going to get anywhere approaching it from what we understand. So anyway, so those are the 2 things that Sean did before the hearing that were publicly known, and then the hearing comes along and he just continues that series of lies, and that's clearly what he is in place to do. Just like Bray and Moultrie before him, in a long line of government people, Blue Book, Grudge, Condon Report, all those were designed to debunk the UFO phenomenon, while secretly investigating it and doing whatever the government is actually doing, the control group, whatever they're doing behind the scenes. And then they, allow the public to see the government investigating UFOs and then to debunk them. And so Sean knows all about this, and he is that is what his job is to do, is a disinformation agent.
And I guess one of the other concerning things out of that hearing was the fact that the senators seemed disinterested and more focused on Chinese spy balloons. I mean, it didn't seem like there was any sort of there was no questions from them. I don't think any of them mentioned the word alien once.
Right.
Is something going on with Congress now? It seemed like there was an interest at some point, and now it seems like it's, I don't know, going away. I mean, is there something? It seems to me what I'm seeing. It seems to me is that they're pulling the rug out from this slow disclosure. They brought it up to a certain point, but they don't seem like they're willing to go beyond that point. And now, in fact, they're trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. I don't know if I'm right about that or that, but that's what I observe. I don't know. That's what it seems like to me after watching this for since it started.
Yeah, I was really rooting for Kirsten Gillibrand to emerge as a hero in all this, or a heroine in all this. She seemed really gung-ho pushing the UFO thing, and demanding funding for AARO and all that kind of stuff. And then she gives him softball questions when the time comes. She didn't ask him any questions about, interviews they've had, Robert Salas, all that kind of stuff, stuff that we know that AARO has done that is really interesting, and that information should come out there, and that sort of information would further the conversation. Instead of furthering the conversation, Sean did a backpedal. And he pretended that things that we know that exist and that the government has studied in, models they've developed, like the 5 observables, that they don't exist. So, I mean, it wasn't like he was just, stationary, we haven't made any progress. It was like, oh, not only have we not made any progress, but these other things don't exist. Senator Ernst seemed more like she wanted to pin everything on the Russian or the Chinese. And she even laughed at Sean's joke when he said, we were trying to turn anomalous objects into other people's problems. And he said that 3 times at least, and she laughed at one of those times. So, and then Senator Kirsten Gillibrand did not push him at all. Really, really disappointed. So why are they doing that? Well, we don't know exactly, but we do know that they have a history of doing this. Harry Reid tried to get access to the reverse engineering, the UFO crash retrieval stuff, just as Admiral Tom Wilson did. The director of national intelligence, and both of them very high-ranking people in their own spheres. One in the political, one in the Pentagon or the government, and they were both able to see that there was a crash retrieval program, and they both wanted access and information about it, and both were denied. They were both told a little bit. Like Tom Wilson, from the famous, Wilson leak,
right.
He was told that there was a crash retrieval program and that they did have ships, but they didn't have any bodies. There were no alien abductions. And that was the end of the story. Go home. And when he pushed, they threatened his career. And apparently the control group has enough juice to threaten the director of national intelligence successfully. And so he backed off. And Harry Reid also did something similar. He pressed for access, and they made him back off. So that's an example of them making politicians, high-ranking politicians, back off, Congress people. And so I guess, shouldn't be a surprise that they made Kirsten Gillibrand back off if that's what happened. We know from Senator Gillibrand and Representative Burchett, Tim Burchett, that he said that certain members of Congress on both sides of the aisle that had been vocal advocates of the UFO issue were compromised. He didn't give any information about what he meant by that, but he seemed to be impugning Marco Rubio and Kirsten Gillibrand, because those were the leading voices on both sides of the aisle. I imagine they ran into the same sorts of things that Harry Reid did, and they were made to back off in the same sorts of ways. But that's
I look at it too. Like, I mean, you look at the way politicians are basically. I mean, a lot of them receive funding from campaign donations from the military industrial complex. I mean, you can go online. There's, I think it's $30-40 million like every campaign season. And, maybe they're told, hey, if you want to keep pushing this, maybe we'll just not give you any more campaign money. And that's one of the theories, I guess. Or I mean, who knows? I guess it's just a shame. It just seems like it seemed like things were going on well here, and then all of a sudden it seems like again it's getting worse and worse as far as my viewpoint is concerned. And there are some people who watch my channel. Some people get upset about the way I'm looking at this negatively right now, but I don't see how any other way to look at it. I mean, it's the truth. I mean, the truth is that it doesn't seem like we're getting disclosure despite all these people who I really respect, like Christopher Mellon, Lou Elizondo. There's all these different people out there who are saying that, who seem to be saying that disclosure is coming and we're going to get to a point and finally it's going to happen. But now it doesn't feel that way. It feels like we're going backward. And I don't know if I'm wrong to say that, but that's how I see it. I don't know. How do you see that?
No. Like I just said, Sean Kirkpatrick is backpedaling. We were making forward progress, and we had some information coming out of ATIP, which seemed to be an honest effort to investigate the phenomenon with what little resources they had. I don't even think they had a budget at all. I mean, all the money was for OSAP that came earlier. And but yeah, so with what little resources they had, ATIP was pursuing an honest investigation. And they developed the 5 observables, and they had all those reports they had commissioned, or maybe that was OSAP, but they had inherited that. And then along comes the UAP task force, and they hired Dr. Travis Taylor to be their chief scientist, right? And of Skinwalker Ranch fame. And then we have the flying pyramids, the green flying pyramid video that came out that was released by Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Presumably that was leaked to them or given to them by Chris Mellon. That seems to be one of his main sources, Jeremy. And so a truly anomalous object. It was a big pyramid flying over a warship, right? And Travis Taylor reaches the conclusion this is anomalous. This is the chief scientist for Bray and Moultrie, the heads of the UAP task force after Jay Stratton leaves. I wish he had stayed, but he did not. So that is who would have made the determination what sort of object this was as their chief scientist. When it came time for Bray and Moultrie to report to Congress and for the first UAP hearing in modern history, instead of going with the data that their chief scientist had given them, somebody else came along and told them to say something different. And when they were asked about the flying pyramid, they said, it's a bouquet effect. Yeah. It's a lens effect. It's an artifact. It's not a real object. And despite, multiple censors having seen this, witnesses having seen it, we have a lot of information and data on these objects. And so they were clearly lying and they were backpedaling. And so that began the backpedal, was that first UFO hearing. Clearly the fix was in from that moment on. And then some people had hoped that Sean Kirkpatrick would be of a different ilk. I didn't. I knew that he was going to be an ally of Bray and Moultrie, and he was going to continue that. And he has. So the fix is in. The powers that be, the control group, whoever is doing this, suppressing this information, is running the show, which is not what Lou and Chris and Tom and Jim and all those guys had in mind when they kickstarted this whole thing.
Well, regarding the control group, that's something we both talk about a lot. The secret control group behind the scenes. Again, I feel like even with AARO, I mean, to me, it's like a front almost. I mean, we're not getting to the heart of things with something like AARO or any of that stuff. To me, it's like we're playing this dumb game where behind the scenes, there's all these decades, there's a secret control group that has to be, had to be studying this for who knows since the 1950s, late 40s, or there's something in place. I mean, going based on the Wilson Davis memo, like we were just talking about before. I mean, obviously, and other things, it's not just that. Where there's a lot of evidence that points to this secret control group, whatever it's called. I don't know, Majestic 12, some people say, but who knows? But there's something in the background. That's who we really should be should be meeting with Congress in these committees. Not, it seems like we're starting from scratch when really in the background there's already evidence compiled and there's data that could be presented and proof. I think I would imagine that there's alien bodies on ice and there are recovered craft. I mean, that's how I see it. I mean, but I guess we're playing. They wanted to try to do it this way. That's where the effort began. Let's try to get Congress interested. We'll have them start a UFO office, and maybe we'll try to finally pry out the truth that way. But it doesn't seem like it's working because, again, the secret control group is in the background pulling the strings. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. The control group is pulling the strings. And I mean, I think it goes really deep. I think it's very vast. I think it's, working with cosmic forces. There was the Lockheed Skunk Works engineer who worked on the SR-71 Blackbird in the early 60s. And he had fellow engineers, buddies of his, that would tell him stories about how they were in their own projects, not working on the Blackbird, but they were doing their own thing. And remember, Skunk Works helped build Area 51. And they've been in this game for forever. He said that they were working with beings to develop training devices for U.S. military personnel to fly UFOs or UFO-like objects, and maybe the ARVs from Mark McClandish, whatever. John Keel was talking about human-flown vehicles, UFOs in the 1960s. So this would match that timeline very well, right? And we know that they have been retrieving craft since at least 1945. That was the Trinity crash. That was also the year we acquired the Mussolini UFO. I think that was down in 1933 or crashed or whatever, 1933, and went into the hands of Mussolini and Marconi. And Marconi's an interesting figure in all this too. And anyway, so they've been in the game since at least then, and that's why the initial. I don't know if the dates are for AARO. They were supposed to look at historical cases going back to 1945.
Yeah,
and then that's why that was in place. I forget if that was the final date because they changed that a few times. But that's why 1945 was the date on that. The men in black were in place at Roswell. They were going around town hushing people up.
Yeah.
So I mean, this has been going on since before Roswell. I don't know if it's been going on since before Trinity.
There's the Cape Girardeau, Missouri incident from 1942, I believe. There was an incident where an alleged crash. There's been a book about that. But who knows? I mean, I think the lying started actually to the public started in July of 1947 with that, when the press release came out saying it was a flying disc, and then no, it's just a balloon. That's when the lying to the public began. As far as other crashes before, like the 1945 Trinity one. Yeah, by the way, that was set up, I think, to start from January 1st, 1945 forward. But again, is there any documentation that AARO is going to be able to get their hands on that? There's no way that the secret control group is just going, oh, yeah, here you go. I mean, that's not going to happen.
Right. No, it's not. It's not going to happen. They've been covering up this for a long time. And there's a wealth of evidence. Ross Coulthart has said that their Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is or was a virtual parking lot of UFOs from all the crash retrievals they've done. And it apparently is a multinational effort. The U.S. seems to be leading the effort for the crash retrievals. But this has been going on for a long time, potentially before 1945. It seems like it's a very deep program. It's a very large program. Richard Dolan calls it the breakaway civilization. I used to think that was a little bit too fancy. I didn't like saying the breakaway civilization. I would call it the breakaway group. But the more I looked into it, the more I became convinced that it was as big as a civilization might imply. When you look at, the DUMBs, stuff, the deep underground military bases, and there's scant evidence for that, but the evidence that does exist is compelling. and the scantiness of the evidence itself and the things that have happened to people that have looked into it is telling all by itself. So I'm not 100% sold on the dumbs. I'm not 100% sold on the secret space fleet. But I do believe we're probably working with the beings. The control group is working with the beings. That's just me. But I think the evidence bears that out. Cases like Terry Lovelace that I talk about a lot. I love that case because it was, Lou Elizondo calls him credible. And in fact, he just hung out with Terry Lovelace a few weeks ago. And so he has an ongoing relationship with Terry. He thinks he's a good guy, a solid guy. And Terry says that when he was abducted aboard this giant UFO that was much bigger on the inside than it was on the outside, and it was already pretty big on the outside, like the size of a Walmart on the outside, and inside it was the size of a giant stadium. And so, what are you going to do with that, Sean Kirkpatrick? That doesn't defy the known laws of physics, right? But he says that there were upwards of 50 U.S. Air Force officers. I don't know if they were officers, but U.S. military personnel that were aboard the UFO, interacting with the beings there. And they weren't just guests. They weren't just passengers. They weren't just being taken to, the Galactic Federation headquarters or whatever. They were actually pushing buttons and helping run the craft. They were actually crew members of this giant UFO. And again, this is somebody that Lou Elizondo says is credible. And there are many other cases like that where people have seen the military and government officials working with the beings. Many abduction cases, people will see the beings working alongside military and government officials. And to such an extent that people like Stephen Greer seize upon that and say, oh, well, it's all the military. The beings have never done any harm. The beings are purely good and will never harm anybody. Well, there's good beings and bad beings from my research, and the general thrust seems to be positive, but there are many negative experiences that people have. And anyway, but so the military and the government seem like they are working with the beings at a very high level. I mean, these 50 Air Force guys were crew members. I mean, they weren't just along for the ride. So the control group has a lot to cover up, and they've been covering this up for a long time. It should never have happened. The secrecy should never have happened. They should have, when the first crash came along, they should have been up front with the people and said, hey, we've got a crash. Oh, well, now we're dealing with some beings, and gotten the public's involvement in that. And this is a huge thing for the fate of humanity. The people should be involved in the decision-making process. But somewhere along the way, it was decided that we didn't have the right to decide or to have any say in this. And now we have the control group probably working with the beings. That's what I believe that the evidence shows anyway. And, I totally understand if you think that's crazy. And,
I don't.
If you haven't got, but then you have many cases where we have seemed like we have been shooting at UFOs. There's a whole bunch of cases from pretty credible people that have seen within America and outside of America. There's the famous Italy case where the UFO shot down a helicopter with a laser. Didn't hurt anybody, but it shot this helicopter down after the UFOs were setting fires in Italy. Anyway, weird story. I don't understand that. What the heck was going on there? But it shows that there is violent interactions with UFOs. At the same time, we seem to be working with occupants of the UFOs. So without the people's consent, some faction within the government or outside of the government has been working with some beings and shooting at other beings. And we can only hope they pick the right side. So, I mean, this is important stuff, and the government should be involved in this. The secrecy should never have been allowed to exist. I don't care if it would have freaked people out back in the 40s or 50s. They were reading all sorts of sci-fi stuff. There were sci-fi movies. It seemed like they may have been, being prepared for something. And I think they were ready at that time. It would have freaked them out, sure, but they would have gotten over it. They would have thought it was cool. A lot of them. And yeah, so the secrecy never should have happened. And now they are in so deep and they have so much to cover up, decades and decades of this stuff. And they're working with the phenomenon has probably evolved over the years. And they probably didn't start with 50 military guys aboard a giant UFO. So they have even more to cover up now. So how can they ever be honest with the people?
Speaking of the military guys, I mean, one of the theories that, some of the things that I've read, books like by David M. Jacobs, for instance, where abductees seem to come, or sometimes these hybrids are basically dressed in military attire, the camouflage fatigues, things like that. I mean, you have to wonder. This is the problem. We don't really know what exactly is going on here. But maybe like in that case with Terry that you're talking about, when he's inside that ship and there's like 50 people, it was apparently military personnel pushing buttons and working in there alongside the aliens. Are they perhaps hybrid? Or maybe somehow a hybrid group has infiltrated this secret control group, and that's really what's pulling the strings behind the scenes, that the aliens themselves are actually the ones in charge right now, and that's why we can't get any answers, because they have control. They have the ability to control human beings mentally. I've experienced one of these beings when I was a kid, and it basically shut down everyone in my family, and basically ended up then finally just not conking me out somehow. But so I understand how the ability that they have. So I don't know. That's just one of the, I know that sounds crazy. This theory that perhaps the aliens have infiltrated the government somehow, the most secretive, deepest sections of the government that is in charge of studying UFOs, and they're the ones responsible for keeping this thing secret. I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, well, now I'm fascinated by your own story. I want to hear more about that. That sounds really, really intriguing. Have you made some videos about that? I need to check.
Oh yeah, I've talked. That's like one. I talk about that all the time. And I saw, and that was in 1977, and then in 1994, during a fishing trip with a buddy, I saw a flying saucer up close and personal. Right? Basically, within 20 feet, and it was only 2.5 stories off the ground. It made no sound. It moved in ways that conventional aircraft can't move. So I saw that, and when I was a kid, I wake up in the middle of the night and there's some being standing right beside my bed that only had 3 fingers on its hand, and there was an electronic humming sound going on. And after that happened, and then I was screaming for my mom and dad. It's a longer story than that, but I'm screaming for my mom and dad. I'm trying to wake my brother up. Nothing's happening. I have a blanket over my head, and I could see the shadow of this hand getting closer to where my face is and further away. And meanwhile, there's this buzzing, this sound going on, and it's somewhat muffling my voice. And I'm praying to God, and nothing's happening. The thing's not going away. And then eventually, somehow, I just passed out, right, and wake up the next day, and nobody believed me. But at the time, I didn't know I didn't realize that there was such thing as aliens or alien abduction or anything like that. In fact, it wasn't until about 10 years later, watching a documentary on, alien abduction, when I put 2 and 2 together, I used to think it was the devil or something. I had no idea what it was. I guess, you said you didn't, that's when my interest in UFOs and aliens started. I guess you said your interest started when those videos were leaked and Lou Elizondo came out of the shadows in 2017. There's always a point where somebody finally realizes things, and similar, I guess, in your case, you saw that. I was like, wow.
Yeah, well, I feel so bad about it now because my uncle was always into UFOs and he would try to get me into it. And I was like, oh, that's silly. If there's aliens here, then why aren't people seeing aliens? Well, people were seeing aliens. I just wasn't looking at the evidence. And once you look at the evidence, it's irrefutable. Once you look at enough of it,
right?
And I didn't allow myself to look at it. I thought it was silly. I figured aliens were up there somewhere, but yeah, they're not here. And I am a fantasy and science fiction writer, a novelist, and I thought I needed to bring the fantastic into the world because the world wasn't fantastic enough. And after I realized the truth of this, I kind of had to go through a process of re-engaging my connecting to my writing again, because suddenly the world was very fantastic. And anyway, I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, it was 2017. That was where I started my interest. And then because I don't have a day job, because writing is my day job, I have an obsessive personality. I had plenty of time, all the time, to look into every rabbit hole, go down one rabbit hole after another, and just obsessively study every facet that I could find. And one rabbit hole will go to another, and so on. And anyway, yeah,
absorb as much as it possibly could after you start realizing that, oh, there's something to this. Yeah. I mean, yeah, you have a lot of us. I mean, I get to the same thing where I'll just keep reading one book after another, watching I'll sit there and watch Preston Dennett videos for 2 days straight, and I'll just binge watch, a lot of these different people who are online. Richard Dolan, I'll watch a lot of his stuff. I love his books. Preston Dennett he has 50 books actually. And there's just so many good researchers out there. Timothy Good, the Roswell stuff by Donald Schmidt and Thomas Carey. I can't get enough of that kind of thing. And I think that's where a lot of people people who are interested in this thing should really check out the books, because the books always have way more information than you're ever going to ascertain from watching YouTube videos, or there's just so much stuff that might get missed in the shuffling. But when you read these books, it's there. You see everything, and it's fascinating. Okay, we are going to take a quick break from our interview with Jack Connor, and we will be right back. I wanted to talk about right now. And you are in Texas.
Yeah,
you're situated in Texas, and right now, you're right in the heart of this latest. I just talked about it, and I saw that you talked about it then, about these cattle mutilations that are ongoing there, and you're going to be looking into this. You were talking about in your recent YouTube video.
Yeah, I'm the co-founder of a local MUFON chapter. It's the Brazos Valley MUFON chapter. And these mutilations happened in the Brazos Valley, actually in the neighboring counties within the valley, but very close to where I am, and just the county next door, and or the counties. I think it was multiple counties. And we actually talked about. We had a MUFON meeting on Saturday, and we spent most of the meeting talking about this. We have now 2 field investigators that are looking into this. The sheriffs haven't been real cooperative. We're trying to get information from the police department, and they haven't really been ponying up very well. So we may have to go through the reporters to see if they've gotten any details, because we would really like to talk to the ranchers, but we don't know which ranches. That wasn't disclosed. And but we have one guy that is very familiar with the cattleman industry. And so he may be able to get some access and to find out some of the gossip that's going around the cattleman community locally, and maybe we can make some headway that way. And there's been talk about maybe asking Linda Moulton Howe if she wants to be involved in this. And it'd be so cool to get Linda Moulton Howe involved.
Oh man, yeah.
I love her, and of course, she made her bones on cattle mutilations, no pun intended. And but I think the cattle mutilation phenomenon is fascinating. I've seen so many different theories about why they do this, and occasionally even experiencers will get some glimmer of understanding. That unfortunately they don't always understand the same thing, which is typical for interacting with the beings. They'll tell you stuff. Can you rely on it? I don't know, because they'll tell somebody else something different. Life would be so much easier if you could trust what the beings say, or trust what the government says, but you can't.
Yeah, you can't. Well, regarding the cattle mutilations, I believe it seems like these aliens over the decades now, they just can't resist our cattle. I mean, I think one way to get to the bottom of this actually would be to stake out one of these ranches. I mean, if you had a scientific group, converge on one of these places and set up shop for a while, maybe we can get to the bottom of this that way. I mean, of course, a private scientific organization, nothing connected with the government, because the government will never share any information about this with the public.
Well, Skinwalker Ranch did that.
They did.
And so they had a cattle mutilation, and they had cameras all over the place, and they were able to see there was a UFO right over the cow right before it was killed.
Right.
Then, they were able to, they had a Geiger counter. They had some other equipment they took out to the carcass. And I forget, I think there was a little radiation, but it wasn't like a massive amount. And if I'm remembering that right, if you guys remember better, let me know. And then the carcass remained untouched by predators for a long time, which is typical for these anomalous mutilations as well. So there was one example of a
That's one. I mean, we need more though. We need more than just that. We need to see beings on site. I mean, I think there has to be a way to get to the. I mean, they can't resist. They've been doing it. It's not stopped. It continues. I mean, it's just the Texas one is just there's stuff going on in Colorado right now. I just talked about that recently. There's other areas in the Midwest where things like this are happening. So. I think, and right now, Australia, there was another case I just talked about. There was a couple in Australia, 20 cattle since 2018 that they came up mutilated. I mean, wow. I like to know the story that was in the newspaper regarding or online with regard to your location. It didn't say. I mean, it said there was no blood. I'm just wondering, was the blood drained? That's one of the earmarks of these. Cases usually a lot of times the blood is completely drained from these animals. It didn't say that specifically.
Yeah, the blood was drained. It's all the usual stuff. One flap of the cheek was removed. Okay. I hate to get too graphic, but the anus was cored out and right. The genitalia. I think that the anus was only cored out of two of them.
Yeah.
And which is interesting that there's some they core and some they don't. They only needed two anuses. Why do they do this? Why do they take the blood? Do they need something in the enzymes or the bacteria, or are they monitoring something? That's one theory, is that they're using these cattle and these animals, because it's not always just cattle. There's other animals to get
right.
But are they using them? To see if there's pollutants in the ground, and that if we're absorbing nutrients or pollutants, and seeing how many pollutants we're absorbing by how many the cows are. Now, that's one theory. There's a whole bunch of theories. Some say that hybrid children, after they're being taken from the mother's womb at 3 months old, are then put in a cow's womb for a while. But that doesn't explain why they take out the rectum or the cheek or the blood. And another theory is that because there have been two and this is just my own theory. This is, or not even a theory, but an idea. And I don't think it really bears out. But there have been a couple of abductees that have seen the gray aliens feeding. And they bathe, they absorb nutrition through their skin. They bathe in these vats and they absorb nutrients that way. So, when I first came across that, I was like, well, there's a liquid with the nutrients. They're taking blood from cows. That's got a lot of nutrients. Could that be a source of nutrition? But I don't think that bears out because of the vast numbers of UFO encounters. I mean, there's, 10,000 or whatever cattle that have been mutilated, but there's so many more, the beings have been here for a long time. There's a lot of them. I mean, according to, the Roper poll conducted by David Jacobs and Bud Hopkins, and I want to say John Mack was involved in that in the 90s. According to that Roper poll, the 2% of the world populace is an alien abductee, and David Jacobs has since said they had to really get that down to 2%, not to freak people out. 2% is alarming enough, but the real number was like 5%. And so let's just say that's right. Let's thought experiment. Let's say that's right. 5% of the world populace. That's like hundreds of millions of people. Can you imagine the presence, the ET presence that would require to facilitate that, whatever they're doing? So 10,000 cows is not going to feed, over decades, is not going to feed the workforce that would require. Unless they're able to synthesize or take the blood and use it to clone more blood or something like that, which is always possible. But then,
Well, your theory is I mean, that idea that you're talking about. I mean, that is something that's shared by a lot of people. In fact, there's this guy that I do talk to. He provides information anonymously. He's a retired electronics engineer we did work for the CIA and NASA, among private defense contractors, and he believes that a lot of these beings are actually like insects. In fact, you hear about the insectoid insects that seem to be in control of the grays and everything else, and that they feed on blood. He firmly believes that cattle mutilation, his belief is that cattle mutilation is basically because they need blood. They're just like insects, just like a praying mantis. Some praying mantises that we know of on Earth, they feed on blood. So that would be the same thing with these beings, and that's why this is happening. And who knows? I mean, you're talking about the cattle, but then there's other animals too that we don't even know about. I mean, the cattle, I think we notice because, I mean, that's the only thing we're eating them too. I mean, we're not watching all the deer and all the other animals in the forest. So who knows how much exactly is being mutilated on an annual basis.
good point.
And like you said, it could be getting mixed with some other kind of things to make if that theory is true, that they're absorbing it through their skin, it could be getting mixed with other sorts of liquids or nutrients or something else. And it's all we can do is speculate. We have no answers. The people who have the answers is the control group. I mean, I'm sure they don't have all the answers, but they have some answers, and they could shed light on some of this, I'm certain.
Yeah, and what answers they don't have, if they do have a relationship with the beings, they could just ask. They have a direct pipeline to at least some of the truth, whatever amount of truth the beings are willing to impart. Again, you can't always trust what the beings say, unfortunately, but yeah. So we need some. I don't know how it would be possible for the control group to be opened up. I think that amnesty would be a big deal, but people like Sean Kirkpatrick seem committed to their cause. I mean, he goes out of his way to co-author a paper with Avi Loeb to slow down the investigation of UFOs. It's not like this is an idle thing. This isn't somebody just doing their shift as a disinfo agent. I mean, they seem to zealously approach their jobs, and the control group. I think that whistleblower protection could encourage some people on the very periphery of the control group to come forward. And I think that'd be great. That'd be invaluable to get some glimmer of information behind the veil. But the people in the control group, I think that they are committed to their cause. They have something that they believe in. I don't know what it is. Is it for selfish gains? Is it because, like in the X-Files, when it's this elite group that they are personally benefiting from this interaction with the phenomenon? Or is it more selfless? Are they doing this to benefit humanity and this relationship they have with the phenomenon, or whatever they're doing? If you don't want to go there, if you just want to look at the reverse engineering UFO kind of thing, and that's fine. Whatever they're doing, is it selfless or is it selfish? Whatever it is, they seem to be committed to it. They seem to zealously approach it. And maybe almost religiously. I mean, they're that committed to it. So how can you breach that level of commitment and secrecy, and a secrecy enforced by that level of commitment? And also, if they're working with the beings and the beings don't want this out there. And that's another interesting wrinkle in this is Haim Eshed, the brigadier general in Israel, who was one of their higher ups. I forget his exact ranking, was their chief security officer for the space ministry or whatever it was. Correct me, let me know what it really is. But he was one of their head honchos in the Israeli space ministry. And he was saying some really crazy stuff like, there is a galactic federation that is working with humanity, and most of the world governments, or many of them, know about it and are working with them. Trump wanted to reveal this to the people, and he was talked out of it. It's hard to believe that he could be talked out of something revealing something that juicy, but that was the story that Haim Eshed said. And Haim Eshed further said that the beings don't think we're ready for disclosure. And we would not be ready for disclosure until we understood the nature of space and spaceships. I thought I knew what space was. I thought I knew what spaceships were. I actually have a video that just came out this morning that goes into a possible scenario about what he may have been talking about. And this goes into a remote viewing session with Dick Algier and Das Smith, where they interact with a Nordic being, or Dick does. And also some comments from the lady, what she told Chris Bledsoe. And and about how the stars may be gateways to beyond this reality. And so that could be what Haim Eshed was referring to.
I didn't see your latest video yet. I have to check.
Yeah, it just came out. It just came out. And anyway, so if indeed the control group is working with the beings are probably running the show. And if they don't think we're ready for disclosure, it's not going to happen. So I think we can't wait on the government to do that. They're clearly not going to do that. I was really hoping they would with AARO and everything. But I think that as much as it galls me to say it, because I don't like Stephen Greer, his approach where you engage the phenomenon directly through initiated contact, CE5, there's the only way forward that I see, given the government's current, modus operandi, their level of commitment to disclosure, which is very, very minimal. So I think that if we want to further our relationship with the phenomenon and learn some of the truths behind the phenomenon, we have to engage it directly. And as safely as possible, because I think you can do that and invite dangerous beings in, and don't do that. But as safely as you can do it, I think that is the way forward. Is the Protestant model versus the Catholic model. Don't wait for the central authority to be your pipeline to the above. Go out and do it yourself. And
I always had this fantasy of like walking through the woods by myself and coming across a crashed saucer with dead alien body just laying there. Like, what would I do? How would I handle it? How would I get it out to the world before the secret control group finds out about it and covers it all up? That would be something. But hopefully something like that could happen to anybody someday, and hopefully they could handle it correctly and get the information to the public.
Well, there's been a few whistleblowers that have said that they have the control group, whoever it was, had feelers out to all the news agencies, for decades. And whenever a reporter would be about to say something, they would go and talk him out of it. And so they even if they didn't kill the story, they would color the story in such a way that it wasn't, leading people toward disclosure. It was, a debunking of the story.
Wow.
And so I believe that, because that makes total sense. I mean, of course they would do that.
Okay, now in June there's going to be apparently I've been hearing this House Oversight Accountability Committee is going to be having a hearing, and a portion of it at least is going to be open to the public. Can we expect anything good to come out of this? I think Tim Burchett might be part of this. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm not. I've after what happened with the Senate committee hearing, I don't have much faith in what's going to happen from here on out. I could be wrong, but I hope I'm wrong. I want to be wrong. I want to be proven totally wrrong.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I would love it if Sean Kirkpatrick came out later today with the full, deal. I would love to be proven wrong about him. I love Tim Burchett. I think that he is our best advocate for disclosure in the government right now. And he has been more forthcoming than anybody else. And he's even willing to smear people on his own side of the aisle. over this issue, and people on the same side of the aisle will attack each other, but over such a fringy topic as UFOs. So I think that he is really an interesting figure in all this, and I think that he could be a source for, and he already has been a source of disclosure. I mean, he's flat out said there's ETs and there's a crash retrieval program and etc. But if he's like, I don't know what this new hearing, if they're really going to talk about UAP. I hope they do. I don't know. Has that been confirmed?
I just been here. I just heard that this morning. Somebody sent it to me in a message online, and I'm not sure. I haven't really looked into it yet, but I've heard this before, and I assume that there's going to be one, but maybe not. I mean, they're saying the House Oversight Accountability Committee is going to have something in June.
Well, it definitely seems like the Senate has been compromised. So if we're going to make any progress, it's going to be with the House. Now, if there's interviewing Sean Kirkpatrick again, if they're trying to get their information from him again, or from AARO, I don't know if they're going to make any progress.
I was thinking, well, I thought what was going to happen when I hear about whistleblowers, they passed that new legislation. I thought we would start seeing whistleblowers showing up in congressional hearings, and where's that? How come that's not happening? Well, and then you hear,
so we know that's happening. We know people like
behind the scenes, secret ones.
Behind the scenes. So why did they not ask him questions about that? So maybe if they do get Sean Kirkpatrick on the stand again in the House, then Representative Burchett will ask those questions.
I mean, why can't Robert Salas come? Why can't we hear something publicly from him in a congressional hearing, or like have something, not just him, but several other people that have been have been talking about different incidents that they're aware of. Why not Eric Davis have him there, sitting there in a public forum to talk about this? I think these secret meetings I think it's bogus. I think we should be hearing these things publicly, because it seems like they go into these secret closed hearings and then they just die there, and then we never really hear much about it. You hear rumors. Oh yeah, Eric Davis met with some people from AARO, or Robert Salas is talking to somebody from AARO on the phone, but then you hear Sean Kirkpatrick step up to the mic and say, "Yeah, we have no evidence whatsoever." So
right, and then he even seemed to resent the people they were sending to him. He says, "In the future, when you send people to me to give testimony, you need to prioritize the people that you send me. You're wasting my time." So. Yeah,
I wonder if he means Salas when he says that.
Right, exactly. Are UFOs shutting off nuclear reactors wasting your time, Sean Kirkpatrick? I'm so sorry. Your time is that valuable. He's got very, very valuable time.
Well, that's what I mean. Like you see this where Salas's story, of course, as we all know, for a long time, a flying saucer shows up, hovers over over this silo, shuts all the missiles down, and so that's so you're gonna say, and then Kirkpatrick's gonna stand up there and say we have no evidence whatsoever. There's nothing that points to the direction of potential extraterrestrials, basically. Well, how you're saying that Russia and China was doing that back in '67? That's absurd.
Right. Or 45 for that.
Or matter. 45, or even now for that matter. I mean, a flying saucer that makes no sound and then takes off at an incredible speed.
It was the Chinese all along.
Yeah. It's just like it's like it's like in front of our faces, and I'm very frustrated. I'm frustrated that I was really hoping. I did 2 years ago when I started doing the podcast. I was really hoping. I had hope upon hope that we were finally going to get to the bottom of this, but it doesn't seem like it. It seems like we're going backward again, and they're not.
Okay, so there is a little hope. I said earlier that the only way forward is for us to engage the phenomenon ourselves, and I still believe that's probably ultimately going to be true, but. There are people like Ross Coulthart coming out saying there are contingency plans in case Sean Kirkpatrick, failed to deliver the goods, and he did. So he said that there are supposed to be backup plans within backup plans, and they could have just said that to kind of threaten Kirkpatrick into ponying up. But I do believe there probably are some backup plans, and that they are now going to be engaged. So we'll see the width and breadth of those backup plans, and fingers crossed we get some some action
Yeah,
that way.
I believe in these guys in the back. I believe in the Lou Elizondos of the world. I believe in the Christopher Mellons of the world. I believe in these people. They want to see disclosure. There's no question in my mind. Jeremy Corbell, he's been obviously digging up a lot of good stuff. I think I want to see them get this information out. They want to get it out. They seem like they're completely devoted to it, and I want to see it, and they're very enthusiastic about it. But at the same time, it doesn't matter how enthusiastic you are, or how many contacts you might have in the Pentagon that might feel the same way. I think the power behind the power to keep this shut from the public is just, it's stronger than we could possibly realize, I think. And that's my concern. Unless there's something that they can do outside of these hearings, I think that might have to rely on something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's true. If the control group is really working with the beings, and if that's who's managing the cover up in Congress, I don't know if that's been confirmed, but that would make sense. At least for some vestige of the control group or some part of it. Because, I would imagine that level of control would be connected to the crash retrieval programs that Harry Reid and Tom Wilson were being able to get. And I would imagine that existed, on the outer levels, the outer layers of the onion of the control group. That's not the deep core of the control group, but it's still an important part in managing government and Congress and everything. That's an important part of what they're doing. But what would it take to pierce that veil of the onion? It'd probably take less effort than the deeper levels. Maybe we can get some sunlight into those crash retrieval programs. Ross Coulthard has been talking about that a lot. And getting some really interesting information. He was able to track one crash retrieval team from the US that went to Australia to retrieve a crash there. He was able to track them to Long Beach, California, to a aerospace company. He didn't name the aerospace company. And so he's been getting some interesting behind the scenes information as well. And although one really interesting part of his information, Ross Coulthard, is that there was a Australian-based crash retrieval team that left Australia to retrieve a crash outside of Australia. So why was a U.S. crash retrieval team required to come into Australia to retrieve? I don't quite understand that. But anyway, so there is some information about crash retrievals that people are getting access to. And if people like Ross Coulthard, who's a fairly mainstream journalist, a well-respected journalist, can get access to this stuff, maybe there's hope that Congress can also get access to it.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think what I'd like to see more than anything would be like the leak to end all leaks. I mean, that's what I've been waiting for. I mean, there has to be something out there that if it was ever leaked, that it would put an end to it. Right? I don't know what it would be. I don't know if it would be a book, a binder filled with documents and images and pictures, or maybe a reel of film that was taken from Roswell, something to that effect, to end this whole debate once and for all. I would love to have. I want to see the leak of all leaks. That's what I keep waiting for. Now those images that we received in 2017, they were very compelling, but we need something more than that.
Lou has said that they have really compelling video in the ATIP archives that AARO has right now, that they're sitting on a wealth of really compelling videos of objects doing fantastic things. And so where was that? The only video that was new that Sean Kirkpatrick showed, other than the one that he debunked, was the orb, the metallic sphere, which you have to ask, would he have released that if Jeremy Corbell hadn't released the still image of a very similar video, the Mosul orb, a month
probably
ago.
not.
Yeah, probably not, right?
No.
Yeah. He only released that because it was already out there.
Yeah. Because we're already, and then make a statement that there's no evidence of extraterrestrials, and showing that at the same time, like, explain that then. Explain how that orb is flying around then, Sean. I mean,
Right.
could you give us an explanation? Is there any technology that you're aware of that could allow something like this?
Yeah. Yeah. And I wish we could trust the numbers from Sean, because he did provide some numbers like the percentages of metallic spheres versus saucers and etc. And I think that's really interesting, and we can compare that with like the Canadian survey that was done, where they have maybe more reliable information about the statistics on orbs versus saucers versus cubes versus cigar shapes. And so that's really interesting. Unfortunately, we can't trust any of the numbers that Sean Kirkpatrick gave us because he apparently, according to George Knapp, has fudged the numbers before. But that would have been something really interesting that could have potentially come out of the hearing. Is those numbers? If indeed 51% of all UFO sightings are the metallic spheres, I mean, that's some interesting information.
Okay, regarding this year 2023, I hear there were a lot of people were very excited in the UFO community early on this year. They thought this was going to be the year that we're finally going to get disclosure. What do you think is 2023 the year or no?
I'm not going to make any predictions on that. I will say there's some interesting stuff. Okay, so John Ramirez, ex-CIA officer John Ramirez, and he has said some kooky stuff, but he has said some really intriguing stuff. And one thing that he said was that disclosure was going to happen in months, not years. And he said that very recently, like last week. And he said something about how there's going to be some event that happened in 2024, but there was another event, a bigger event that was going to happen in 2027, I think is what he said. And so, which is really interesting because that is what the lady told Chris Bledsoe. She said something was going to happen in 2024, and something major was going to happen. And she gave him, when Aries is rising before, whatever it was, some star alignment or whatever. I'm not an astronomy person, but some astronomical event, and that event is going to be 2027, which is exactly what. So we have two pieces of evidence saying the same thing, unless John is simply quoting the lady. So I made a video a few months ago about various apocalyptic modalities. And apocalyptic is not just the ending of this world, but the beginning of a new world, maybe a transition. So you don't necessarily look at it like a negative thing, but there are a bunch of different apocalyptic modalities from various religions and myths and even science, like the big asteroid that's supposed to pass between the Earth and the moon in the late 2020s, is it? Wormwood, whatever. I forget its real name offhand. Apophis? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway, with that thing. So there's various modalities of this apocalypse or a creation of a new world, and they all seem to occur between 2027 and 2032. And I think that's really interesting. I'm not going to go out and set my watch by, disclosure happening in 2027 or 2032, but there do seem to be some signs pointing to something major happening within that time frame. Within the next 10 years, something big may happen.
It's going to happen eventually someday, right? I mean, it has to. I mean, this can't be covered up forever. So sooner or later, we're going to be there, but we just don't know when. A lot of people was hoping 2023, but you're suggesting 2027 to 2032?
Yeah. Maybe. Again, I'm not setting my watch by it. Don't buy any stock based on that, or sell all your stock based on that. But there is some evidence pointing to that. So we'll see.
I don't know how my nerves are going to hold up having to wait for until 20. I mean, if it's even 2027, that's 4 years away.
I know, right?
I hope I can't deal with it.
Months, not years, because I want to get that ball rolling. I want the answers coming, and I think that there's a much bigger picture involved in all of this, because you get into the metaphysical aspect of this. 30% of all alien abductees are near-death experiencers. That's one of my favorite statistics. People who have died crossed over to the other side, and come back. 30% of all alien abductees are composed from that demographic. People see angels aboard UFOs and archangels and the dead and everything. And, some of that could be, screen memories or, false visuals. But that doesn't explain the 30% of near-death experiencers or 30% of alien abductees that are near-death experiencers. And a lot of the UFO sightings correspond with poltergeist activity. There's just a wealth of the supernatural and the metaphysical overlapping with UFOs, including my own UFO sighting, which was a weird metaphysical kind of thing.
Yeah, let's hear about this. You had a UFO sighting of your own.
Well, yeah. So, all right. So, to tell you about the UFO sighting, I'll make it really quick. I don't want to bore anybody, but I've gone to a couple of ayahuasca retreats. If you know what ayahuasca is. Are you familiar with what ayahuasca is? Well, it's a plant medicine ceremony that is performed by Peruvian shamans from the Shipibo tribe. And it's a very powerful plant medicine. Do you know what DMT is?
Okay, yes. You know what I do? I did see something on what you're talking about now.
Okay, yeah. People like Joe Rogan talk about it a lot.
Yes.
Joe Rogan has been to a bunch of these ayahuasca retreats. He's a big proponent of it. And anyway, so I went to a couple of ayahuasca retreats, and I had some amazing, powerful experiences, life-changing experiences at these retreats. And on the second one, on the final night of the second one, I had because I was an atheist all my life. Did not believing in UFOs, didn't believe in any spirituality until my research into UFOs led me into this metaphysical stuff. I see all, because it comes up again and again and again. They're like, there's something here. So I started to investigate that, and I co-founded a ghost hunting group, and we began ghost hunting, and I was doing other research, led me to near-death experiences in Reiki, and quickly, I began having my own experiences. I began having my own metaphysical experiences, and I was an atheist. And then here I am having these crazy experiences, and it was really cool. It's ongoing. It's really, really cool. I love it. It's just really, really neat. And as part of my journey into all of this was I had heard about ayahuasca and these retreats, and I was invited to go to one. And so I did. It was very challenging. I was very intimidated by it. But I wanted to go. So I did. And I had a profound event happen for me in the first retreat. So I went to a second retreat. And the atheist thing, a lot of the near-death experiences that I had been studying they met Jesus, of course, right? As you would expect. But what was really interesting is that even non-Christians would meet Jesus. And people in alien abductions occasionally will have Jesus connections. The beings will tell people, like, study the teachings of Jesus. And these are gray aliens telling people to study. And near-death experiences, people will see Jesus hanging out with the gray aliens. So it made me wonder if Jesus was real in a way that was not just, a cult leader from a couple thousand years ago, which is what I had imagined, was Jesus really Jesus? So I didn't want to look to the Bible. I wanted some independent corroboration of this. So I found the Dolores Cannon books on Jesus, where, if you know who Dolores Cannon is, she is very well known in the UFO community for her hypnotic regressions of many alien abductees.
Yes, yeah.
Like thousands of alien abductees. And she also did that for near-death experiencers. And she could do that for past lives. She could regress people so they could recall their past lives. Now, I don't like the idea of reincarnation. That just rubs me the wrong way. But the point is that she was able to regress a few people that knew Jesus in a former life. And so there's a couple of books from these people who remember Jesus. And one remembers being Jesus's teacher in the Torah. They were the Essenes. If you know who the Essenes are, this nominally Jewish culture that was very near this in this place called Qumran, this little settlement called Qumran, very near Jerusalem. But they had their own beliefs. They believed they were founded by the survivors of Atlantis. They had the crystal technology. They had all this esoteric practices, hands-on healing, meditation, out-of-body experiences, the psychic abilities. They were like learning to meditate when they were 3 years old. The Essenes are the people that wrote the Dead Sea Scrolls. Yes. I know I'm going on and on about this. I'll try to wrap this up. But Jesus, according to these books, was brought among the Essenes as a boy, and they were expecting him because their whole culture was revolved around them. At some point, they were going to teach the great teacher. That's what their prophecies all said. When the star for Jesus, the star came, they knew that was the star, and they were going to expect him, and they knew who he was, and he came among them, and they knew who he was. This is the Messiah. This is the great teacher. We're going to teach him. And he quickly, when he started learning these things, he became the teacher. When he did hands-on healing, light would come out of his hands. So it goes on. It goes on. So I'm reading these books, and I'm really, really moved by this portrayal of Jesus and this vision of Jesus. And so during an ayahuasca ceremony, I'm thinking about these books that I've been reading and this vision of Jesus. And I had this profound, it felt very real moment a long moment where I'm connecting to Jesus. I have this powerful moment. It felt real. It felt so real. I expected Jesus to just come out and, to say, hey, you've done it, Jack. You've cracked the code. Here I am. And so I was like, wow, okay, all right. Well, if this is real, give me a sign. After I've sobered up, give me a sign, and because the plant medicine's pretty powerful stuff. A month later, I saw my first UFO, and it was a doozy because I have to qualify that. I may have seen a UFO previously one time, but it was so fast. It was like that.
Okay. What year was this? What, when you saw the UFO?
I just saw my first one a few months ago. This happened real recently. Wow. This was in November.
Wow.
The retreat was in October and the UFO sighting was in November. My wife and I were driving back from the Renaissance Festival, and it was late at night on the way home, and I see a white luminous object go. It appears in the sky, and then it goes like that and disappears. So it makes this shape. And then I say, oh my God, sweetie, did you see that? She says, no. I said, well, I think I saw a UFO. We need to do some CE5. So I direct my desire for love and fellowship at the stars, just thinking at first this was probably just a regular UFO, or if it was a UFO and not a shooting star or whatever it was. It didn't look like a shooting star, but you never know. And but instantly, just as soon as I think about it, just like 5 seconds after, or maybe 10 seconds after that first initial line goes, a second object, or maybe the first one again, goes like that. So it goes like that. It makes the shape of the cross in the sky. It appears and disappears. The horizontal line was shorter than the first line, making a perfect Christian cross. That's the shape it made in the sky. Was a month after this ayahuasca ceremony where I have this powerful connection to Jesus. I say, give me a sign. A month later, I get a UFO making the shape of the cross in the sky. I go home and I go out in the backyard and I say, did that really happen? If that really happened, give me a sign. And the single luminous round thing blinks on into the sky and then slowly off and vanishes. And then I say, okay, did I really see that? Give me a sign. And nothing happened. I was getting greedy at that point.
Did your wife see the cross when it happened?
She didn't see anything. And I don't think anybody else would have seen it. It was interacting with my consciousness. I think from studying a lot of these UFO encounters, we seem to co-create a lot of them. They are not simply nuts and bolts objects. I don't know what they are, but they do seem to be interacting with our consciousness in many cases. So I don't even know if this was a real object. or if it was something else, or if it was a real object, but it was more etheric and less physical.
There are some strange cases where you hear where there's several people will see something and they all describe it differently, which is very odd. It's almost like these beings have the ability to control what individually we see. In some
because in my MUFON group, we do sky watches, and it's a new MUFON group. We've only had 2 sky watches, but at the last sky watch, some people were seeing UFOs. I didn't see anything. And I was, right next to the people that were seeing them, and they were all seeing the same thing. They were all, "Oh, did you see it go that way? Oh yeah, I saw it go that way. Oh, well, look, it went that way." And so they were all seeing the same thing, and it was choosing to interact with them and to reveal itself to them, but not to others. So about half the people there saw it, half of them didn't.
Yeah, it's all very strange, and we don't have any answers. All I could say is this, Jack, is that there is something here. I know this for a fact because I've seen one of these beings up close, and I've seen one of these craft up close on 2 different occasions. And I've read enough stuff to know that there's something going on, and I know that our government's covering it up. And I'm tired of it. I want more answers. I want to see pictures of the Roswell crash. I want to see film that they might have taken. I want to be told how many alien creatures do they think are here. I want to get to the bottom of it already, and I'm tired of the waiting, and I know that you are too. So
preach, brother, preach.
Well, I want to say, Jack, this has been very entertaining, and I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to let everyone know to make sure to check out Jack Connor on his YouTube channel, Cosmic Road, and I'm going to leave a link for that as well as his Facebook page and Twitter. Check him out on those places too. And is there any other place I should point out?
No, that's it. Thank you very much for having me. It was a great conversation, and I've got to check out more of your videos talking about your own experiences.
Yeah, there's been multiple videos where I talk about. I mean, it seems like what happens is like somebody will come on and like they just start watching me and they'll say, "Hey, and I just did something soft." But I do talk about it a lot. I'll probably bring it up again.
Have you ever had any hypnotic regression, or have you ever been tempted to do that?
Here's the thing with the hip. I'm still on the fence with it. I don't know if I want to relive the 3-fingered hand deal from 1977. I'm not sure if I want to go through that again. That was terrifying. But at the same time, I mean, I'm not sure if I want to remember any more of that. I mean, I'm not sure if that's, but I don't know. I might change my mind someday. Maybe what I'll do is I'll set it up where I'll have somebody hypnotize me and I'll actually, live stream it or film it and then put it on my podcast so everyone can see me, suffering again and like going through the whole thing.
Hey,
again.
People have very positive experiences. I mean, there's some scary experiences that people have. That people also have wonderful experiences.
Mine was not. It wasn't positive. It was very scary and frightening. And I thought I was seeing a demon from hell or Satan himself. That's what I thought it was.
That is scary. Yeah, yeah.
But anyway, I just want to say thanks a lot, Jack. And again, everyone, make sure I highly highly urge you to check out Cosmic Road. That's Jack's YouTube channel. It's very entertaining. He has a lot of stuff on there about UFOs, and I like it a lot, and I think you will too. Again, thanks a lot, Jack. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you, Jim.